Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Northern Grampians Shire Council Statutory meeting. I'm Liana Thompson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Northern Grampians Shire, and my role today is acting as the chairperson while we undertake several formal procedures. So everyone is here and around the table, except of course our former mayor, or our mayor, Councillor Tony Driscoll. Do we have any apologies or requests for leave of absence? There are none. Item 4 on the agenda is the mayoral term. And Section 26(8) of the Local Government Act 2020 states that a councillor elected to fill a vacancy in the office of mayor caused other than by expiration of 1 year or 2 year term serves the remaining period of the previous mayor's term. As Mayor Councillor Driscoll was elected for a period of 1 year, the election of the mayor will be for the remainder of his term. The new mayor will be in place until the Statutory Council meeting on the 7th of November 2022. So now I'm going to facilitate the election of the mayor, which is required under Council's governance rules. I am first going to call for nominations for mayor. And the process by which this happens under the governance rules is in determining the election of the mayor, the following will apply. And this is under 6.7 of the governance rules. The nomination of a candidate for office must be moved and seconded by a councillor other than the nominee and accepted by the nominee. Where only one councillor is a candidate for mayor, the meeting must declare that councillor to be duly elected as mayor. Where there are 2 or more nominations received, a vote must be taken and the councillor who receives the number of votes equal to or greater than half the councillors of the council must be declared elected. Where 2 candidates have been nominated and no candidate receives the number of votes equal to half the councillors of the council, a second vote will be conducted. Where after a second vote 2 candidates have been nominated and no candidate receives the number of votes equal to half the councillors of the council, the Chief Executive Officer will seek the meeting to resolve to conduct a new election at a meeting to be held at 6 p.m. the following day. In the event that no candidate receives an absolute majority of the votes and it is not resolved to conduct a new election at a later date and time, the candidate with the fewest number of votes must be declared to be a defeated candidate. The councillors present at the meeting must then vote for one of the remaining candidates. If one of the remaining candidates receives an absolute majority of the votes, he or she is duly elected. If none of the remaining candidates receives an absolute majority of the votes, the process of declaring the candidates with the fewest number of votes a defeated candidate, and voting for the remaining candidates must be repeated until one of the candidates receives an absolute majority of the votes. The candidate must then be declared to have been duly elected. If a lot is conducted, the Chief Executive Officer will have conduct of the lot, and the following provisions will apply. Each candidate will draw one lot. The order of drawing lots will be determined by the alphabetical order of the surnames of the councillors who received an equal number of votes, except that if 2 or more such councillors' surnames are identical, the order will be determined by the alphabetical order of the councillors' first names. and as many identical pieces of paper as there are councillors who received an equal number of votes must be placed in a receptacle. If the lot is being conducted to determine who is a defeated candidate, the word defeated shall be written on one of the pieces of paper, and the councillor who draws the paper with the word defeated written on it must be declared the defeated candidate, in which event a further vote must be taken on the remaining candidates unless there is only one candidate remaining, in which case that candidate will be declared to have been duly elected. So, now that I've been through the governance rules and people understand, the council understand the state of play and how I shall be conducting this election, I am now going to call for nominations to serve as Mayor of the Northern Grampians Shire for the remaining period of the previous Mayor's term for 21-22. Do I have a nomination?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Emerson for the remaining period for 21-22. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grady. Do I have a seconder for that nomination?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to second that nomination.
Thank you very much, Councillor Haswell. Councillor Emerson, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other nominations for the role of Mayor for the remaining period of the previous Mayor's term, 21-22?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to nominate Lauren Dempsey for the remainder of this 21-22 season. Thank you,
Councillor Stasevich. Is there a seconder for Councillor Dempsey's nomination? Being no seconder for the nomination, that will lapse. Thank you. I'll return then to the nomination of the Councillor Emerson. I have been requested that people to speak to the nomination, and I will conduct this as a for and against the nomination, or speaking for the nomination. Councillor Grady, as you are the mover of the motion, would you like to speak to Councillor Emerson as the nominee?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll nominate Councillor Emerson because the loss of Tony and Councillor Emerson sort of stepped in and has taken over, helped Tony out in the last few months while he was pretty crook. So, yeah, that's really all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Grady. Councillor Haswell, would you like to speak to seconding the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we've all been through a lot with the loss of Councillor Driscoll, and it's cut to the core. And during that last period when he was struggling, Councillor Emerson was there and he was very supportive, and I know that I also feel that Tony's watching down and he would love Councillor Emerson to be the Mayor for this period, the remainder of his period, his term. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak to the nomination?
Yes, I would. Thanks, Madam
Councillor
Chair.
Dempsey.
I'd just like to say I'm a little disappointed that I couldn't at least get a seconder just to be able to have an opportunity to speak to my nomination. It's not about voting or supporting me at all. It's just allowing the opportunity to speak. So from that, I've just prepared a little something I'd like to read out anyway. So I just begin by understanding that this council team right now are in shock, going through quite a mourning process, and this is just a procedural process we never thought we'd have to undertake. I don't want to cause division by running for Mayor, and I know that my fellow councillors respect, value and fairness. In a fair and due process, allowing me the opportunity to present my case would be appropriate. My expectation is that my fellow councillors would have entered the chamber today leaving behind any preconceived ideas or predetermined position on who they would be voting for, as this is a requirement of the Local Government Act. The Act also aims to increase councillor accountability and transparency of councillor decisions, which I hope we can today by having a debate, public debate, and provide respect to the community by doing this. The governance rules of council also state that council is committed to transparency in decision making, and while some councillors may prefer to have these discussions behind closed doors, I believe that it's important and respectful to the community to have this debate and decision making in an open forum. My aim of standing for mayor is to represent my community at the highest honour. As a young female in my first term of council, I'd bring fresh ideas and a new perspective to the council role and the decision-making process. Over the remaining few months of the mayoral term, I'd welcome the opportunity to serve my community and put all my experience, education, knowledge, passion and leadership into action. Our council is a fragile one, meaning that it only has one female representative. In order to meet the Victorian Government aim of reaching 50% representation of women by 2025, it's important for our community to see a female at the helm. And with data showing that females in leadership roles actually encourage more females to engage, which will allow us for a better chance to reach these state targets and lift the representation of women and young people. Some people have suggested that I need to do my time as a councillor to be a good mayor, and to that I say that there are at least a dozen current councillors across Victoria that are in their first term of council and are successful mayors, and this is based on a supportive team of councillors behind them. A more open-minded view would be to consider all the key qualities of a good mayor. For example, some of the key qualities that I possess would be good communication skills that enable me to connect and listen to my community with different views, strategic thinking and commitment to working in collaboration with the councillor team and staff for the best long-term outcomes of our municipality. I am proactive in connecting with people in my community who seek to have their voice heard on council, particular women and young people that represent at least half our population. I'm an experienced networker with strong ability to develop and maintain effective relationships with key decision makers that can bring value to our shire. To me, these are also qualities that would be taken into consideration for the mayoral position. Everyone deserves a fair go, and I believe it is important to be open-minded in your approach to decision making today. Yes, as 6 councillors, we all have one vote, but it should be reflective of our community as well, and as this is who we are representing. I'd like to thank Councillor Stasevich in particular for his nomination and for his continued support for me and for advocating for more women in leadership roles and greater diversity and gender representation within council. Many people in my community have asked me to run for mayor and they'd like to see some change in council and be able to trust that their voices are being heard. Wouldn't it be great to see a female in the lead as the mayor, with the experience and representation of other councillors who've been long serving? Thank you. The time is now. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors that have something to say? Councillor Oster, I will be very clear. I allowed Councillor Dempsey much longer than the speaking times in the governance rules. It is actually only 2 minutes, but because I allowed Councillor Dempsey, I hadn't realised the length of which the statement was going to be made. I have to also be fair and allow that to other people as well.
Sorry, I did think the governance rules were 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, I will not burden the chamber with a prolonged discussion. On the basis that the motion for the nomination for Lauren has lapsed, I would commend Councillor Emerson for his work. He's certainly done stinting work in the community here. I think it was important to recognise the opportunity that we had here to start the succession planning, to recognise a cohort of people that are underrepresented in this council chamber, and certainly we have an opportunity going forward if Councillor Dempsey's time permits in subsequent years to pursue that particular angle. So I commend Councillor Emerson on his work and all of my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillor wish to say something? Councillor Grady, would you like to close off?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just like to close off. My nomination had nothing to do with gender or anything like that. I felt that Murray was the right person to finish his term off, and I just want to make that clear that it had nothing to do with age or gender or anything like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It is with that I have a mover, I have a seconder, I have the councillor is happy to receive it. I can now declare Councillor Murray Emerson the Mayor for the remaining term. Congratulations, Councillor Emerson. And would like you to take the seat if that's possible. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, just before I call for a motion under standing orders to go to the formal presentations from the previous Mayor's position and the current ingoing Mayor's position, I'd just like to say thank you to my fellow councillors for the support that they've given me. I think this is an important time for us to be coming together and supporting each other with only 3 months of Tony Driscoll's time to go. I think it's an important time that we carry on the work that Tony Driscoll has put in place leading up to his very courageous fight with cancer. I know we're all feeling really bad about it. It's still very raw in our minds and we haven't quite got over it yet, but from a council point of view we've got to try and move on and try and do what we think is best for our communities. So I thank each and every one of you for your support. I hope we can continue that work in the next 3 months, and then who knows who will be taking over in November. So thank you very much for that. I'd now call for a motion to suspend standing orders so we can go into the formal presentation procedure, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move motion to suspend standing orders.
Thank you. Could I get a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. All in favour of that motion? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Starcevic.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm really at a loss of what to say here now. I know I've got a task to present you as the Mayor with the gavel. So wherever that is. I apologise for being so disorganised, Councillor Emerson. Okay, it's on its way. It's on its way. So may I give you a virtual congratulations? There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Of course, the response is that how privileged and proud I am to be again representing the Northern Grampians Shire, but more privileged in the knowledge that I'm continuing the late Tony Driscoll's work. I think I can't impress amongst my fellow councillors the importance of what Tony has done. Tony done 9 years with the Northern Grampians Shire, 3 years as nearly 3 years as in the mayoral position. Worked very hard for the Shire, and I think the position of mayor for this 3 months is even more prestigious than it is normally, because we're taking on the task that Tony has left for us. So having said that, we'll move on. I'll ask Councillor Dempsey if she'd like to move a gratitude of thanks to Tony's wife.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge Mrs Annette Driscoll, who's the wife of the late Tony Driscoll, who's been very supportive in his role as Mayor and as councillor over the years. I know I've only been on council for a couple of years now, but it can be quite trying and challenging, and it impacts the whole family. So her support for Tony and for all of us, turning up to events and being involved to the community, we're really grateful for. And we're definitely all thinking of her at this time as well, and we'll present her with a token of our appreciation and gratitude at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'd now call on Councillor Ostasevich to make a presentation to the incoming Mayor's wife.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Wendy, well done. If I may. Congratulations on the participations. I'm sure next year you've been on the game for a long time. Thank you very much. Thanks for supporting Murray. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
She's one of very few words, Wendy, so I don't suppose she'll respond. That concludes the presentations. Oh, okay. Yep, I'll call on the CEO to make deliver a message from the late Tony Driscoll's wife, Annette.
Thank you. And Wendy, this is from Annette. Wishing you all the very best in supporting Murray in a role Tony was so honoured to hold. The hours can be long at times, and I'm sure there will be challenges along the way. But just like Tony and I, together I'm sure you will succeed.
Thank you very much for those kind words from Annette. I'll now ask for a motion to resume standing orders, if I may.
That, Mr Mayor, I'd like to say yes, please, resume standing orders.
Thank you. Councillor Haswell, could I get a seconder, please?
Seconded, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Irwin, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. That concludes the statutory meeting of the Northern Grampians Shire. We'll take a 1 minute break before we resume for our normal monthly council meeting, which was postponed from early this month due to Tony Driscoll's death. So I declare the meeting closed, and we'll resume in 1 minute's time. everybody be upstanding, please, for the affirmation for the council meeting, please. We recognise the traditional owners of the land. We're inspired by the early pioneers and by those who gave their lives for our country. We now ask God's blessing on our deliberations and on our commitment to build a better lifestyle and environment. Thank you. Are there any apologies today? I'm not seeing any, thank you. Item number 2 is the confirmation of the minutes on the 4th of last month, I think it was.
I'd like to confirm that they're an accurate representation, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hass as well. Could I get a seconder, please, in regard to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasevic. Put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 3, any matters arising from those minutes? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Are there any presentations or awards today? I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Any petitions or joint letters? No. Thank you very much. Item number 6, disclosures of conflict of interest. Anybody have any conflicts of interest in regard to any matters that the council will be dealing with today? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. The informal meetings. In the last month we've had a number of meetings. The Local Government Act discussions, the dog lease areas discussions, the operational workforce plan. There are a number of meetings listed in this category. Could I have a motion in regard to those matters, please, that we note them?
Happy to move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasevic. Councillor Irwin, would you wish to speak? Okay. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Are there any items brought forward for today's council meeting? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. The order of business today is 9.1.1, the quarterly council action plan report, and the purpose of this report is to note the 4th quarter of the council action plan 21-22. We have a recommendation here. Can I get a motion from a councillor in regard to that recommendation or any other motion?
Yes, I can move that the council note the quarterly council action plan report and approve the forecast plan.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Councillor Dempsey?
The purpose of this report is to demonstrate the progress of the 4th quarter of the council action plan for 21-22 and outline any actions that will carry over into the 2nd year. We've been briefed on this action plan, and it's also available on council's website as well for anyone wishing to view it. And it provides a list of comments as to how we're tracking, as green, amber or red, and there's great to see so many green actions on there with commentary next to those. You may see that there's a few red columns there with commentary next to them as well, and they just basically just represent the time frame we thought we'd be able to achieve things in, and due to a number of unforeseen circumstances, those timelines have blown out just a little bit, but the work is still progressing, so I just wanted to make note of that. But really, the credit goes to the council staff for really achieving a lot of goals of a very ambitious plan, and then hopefully in future we can look at really consolidating the plan as well, so we can have a really strategic approach moving forward with limited actions to focus on a few key areas and long-term outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin.
Well summed up by Councillor Dempsey. Yes, there are a few red squares there, or rectangles. But look, it's a very extensive plan, and I'd like to add my congratulations to the staff too. They've done a tremendous job in achieving a lot. So well done, and this is a good track of how things are going. So well done, everyone.
Thank you for that. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? I'm not seeing any. I'll ask Councillor Dempsey, would she like to sum up?
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.1.2 is the General Local Laws 2022 adoption, and the purpose here is for Council to consider the adoption of the Northern Grampians Shire General Local Laws 2022. We have a recommendation. Could I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I certainly move the motion that Council 1 notes that a qualified person is certified that Northern Grampians Shire Council Local Law 2022 is consistent with the requirements under Section 74 of the Local Government Act 2020. 2. Makes the Northern Grampians Shire Council General Local Law 2022 to come into operation on 5 September 2022. 3. Adopts the Local Law Guidelines and Waste Services Guidelines as documents incorporated under the General Local Law 2022. And finally, 4. Publishes a notice in the Government Gazette and on the Council's website as required under Section 74 of the Local Government Act 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasevich. Excuse me. Could I have a seconder in regard to that motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Councillor Grady. Councillor Ostasevich, like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Local laws are a regulatory instrument that's required, that's used by local government in Victoria to manage a range of amenity, road, environmental issues in response to specific community needs. The objectives of the local law are to provide peace and order, a nice thing to have, and good governance of the municipality. Provides a safe and healthy environment so that the community within the municipality can enjoy a quality of life that meets expectations. That's something that we hold fairly important to us as a community. It provides also for a safe and fair use of and enjoyment of municipal assets and places. We really want to have peaceful places in our parks and gardens so people can enjoy them and other areas of our shire. The Shire really is focused on bringing in more people into our Shire to increase our population base, to increase the use of our local assets, and these local laws are part and parcel of that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasevich. Councillor Grady.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Starcevich summed that up pretty well. I don't think I can add much more to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grady. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? I'm not seeing any. I'd ask Councillor Starcevich, would you like to sum up?
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.1.3, the dogs on leash areas, and there's a recommendation here in regard to Section 26.2 of the Domestic Animals Act. Can I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
The recommendation is that Council Number 1 adopts an order of Council under Section 26 of the Domestic Animals Act 1994 as attached. 2, publishes a public notice in accordance with Section 26 of the Domestic Animals Act 1994. And 3, undertakes a review of the adopted order within 12 months of the decision to ensure it is appropriate and consistent with the needs and expectations of the community in relation to both the control of dogs and cats.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder in regard to that motion, please?
Second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Councillor Haswell, would you like to speak on behalf of the motion?
Absolutely. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council makes an order of Council under Section 26 of the Domestic Animals Act. The summary is, with legislation already managing the control of dogs, The review of General Local Law 2012 saw the removal of clauses relating to dogs on and off leash and animal excrement, which would now be managed by a council resolution. The removal of these clauses gives the council and the community greater freedom to make changes to the arrangements as an amendment to the local law and would be required if it remained. In order to recommend for adoption, provides the same conditions as per General Local Law 2012, in addition to the controls that owners must take to ensure the safety of others whilst their animals are on and off the leash. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haswell. Councillor Irwin.
Well summed up by Councillor Haswell. Look, I think this law is probably important, very important at this time in life. We've seen post-COVID the number of animals that have been unowned, basically, and pounds in Melbourne and so forth, chock-a-block full of dogs and some cats. So I think it's important that people look after their animals properly. I know where I live over by North Park is the best watered tree in Stawell for sure. And
It's a lemon tree.
it's not a lemon tree, it might be a lemon-scented gum. But it is important that people take good care of their animals, both on their property and when they're out exercising them. And I see a lot of dogs exercising humans every morning. So,
Thank you very much for that. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Haswell, would you like to sum up?
Nothing further, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.1.4 is the Arts and Culture Action Plan 22 to 25, and the purpose here is for Council to endorse or not endorse the Action Culture Plan for that period. Have a recommendation. Could I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion?
Mr Mayor, I'm glad to see that culture is spelt with a C. So certainly the motion would be that we recommend that Council endorses the Arts and Culture Action Plan 2022 to 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasovic. Could I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dempsey. Councillor Ostasovic, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just get myself in order here. We're seeing a rise from the ashes, if you will, as a phoenix of cultural practice and arts as a result of our 2-year hiatus with COVID. More and more of that's coming to play in Carricara Ward at St Arnaud. We also have a fairly significant display of murals across facades of shops. Council's recently conducted Gatherings Festival in both Stawell and St Arnaud was quite a success. Certainly the introduction of QR codes on graphics in St Arnaud had a profound impact on a large number of members of the community. So this plan will then start to solidify the aim to build on arts and culture within our Shire. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasovic. Councillor Dempsey.
Thank you. Second those sentiments as well, and think that just a thank you and well done to Tina and the team on their collaborative approach to this action plan. It's important to look across a variety of areas when it comes to arts and culture. I know a lot of people in the community come up to me and talk about other things apart from sport as well. Obviously in Australia and even locally we're a big sports culture, but for the other people as well that are in the arts and culture space are keen to look at like what can be done there as well. So it's great to see Council taking the lead in strengthening this area and providing something for everyone as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? I'm not seeing any. I'd call on Councillor Ostasovic to sum up if he wishes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's important to recognise that the whole community has to participate in this. It's not just led by one authority. There's a growing emphasis on arts within our shire, within our communities, and I would commend any community member to participate. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. No items in 9.2 or 9.3. So we move to 9.4.1, the procurement policy. And we have a recommendation here in regard to the procurement policy. Can I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that Council adopts the revised procurement policy as attached to this report.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Haswell. Councillor Irwin?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I think there were only reasonably minor amendments to the policy, and it was probably about the thresholds. And the oversight of the policy were probably the main changes, and to rename the policy the procurement policy. Big changes.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Haswell?
Yeah, pretty simple. As Councillor Irwin said, it's just value differences and a renaming. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Irwin, would you like to sum up? Put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.4.2, the community loans policy. And it's an adoption of the revised community loans policy, and I have a recommendation. Could I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The motion put is that Council adopts the revised community loans policy.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasovic. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Grady. Councillor Ostasovic, would like to speak on the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The community loans policy, whoops, sorry, again, I apologise. This is almost like being muted on Teams. The community loans policy provides a framework for, pardon me, for the effective provision of loans to the community to undertake works that are beneficial to the community as a whole. It's something that is not widely that the community are not widely aware of. The fact that we have a loans policy for community is important for the community to recognise. There's a provision for up to a total lending of up to about $150,000 to match to be matched under the financial reserve policy. These funds are allocated based on application, and I would commend the community to understand what the community loan is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostasovic. Councillor Grady.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Ostasovic has summed it up pretty well. I don't think there's much more I can add to that. Everyone thinks they understand what's happened, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Haswell.
Yes, I wanted to say that I was a resident who took up one of those loans long before I became a councillor to rebuild my front veranda, and it's a wonderful scheme. It's a very, very progressive, handy thing to be able to secure a very low interest loan in order to finish your premises, your building, you get the streetscape back to how we want it. So I just like to commend it.
Very much. Any other councillors like to speak? I'm not seeing any. I'll ask the mover if they'd like to sum up.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I direct comments to Councillor Haswell's use of that facility. It's important for community members to recognise that it is available to all, and Councillor Haswell's property is much more the benefit of it. So thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. So 9.4.3, the excuse me, the Audit and Risk Committee Chair and Honorariums. This is a procedure that we go through quite often, and I might say with a similar result. We've got a recommendation here. Can I get a motion in regard to that recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that Council 1 appoints Mr Peter Knights as the Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson for the 2022-23 financial year. 2, sets the remuneration of the Audit and Risk Committee Chairperson from 1st of July 2022 at $2,544 per annum, indexed annually by the rate cap set by the Minister of Local Government. And 3, sets the remuneration for the external independent Audit and Risk Committee members, excluding the Chairperson, from 1 July 2022 at $255 per meeting attended, indexed annually by the rate cap set by the Minister of Local Government.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Could I get a second in regard to that motion?
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Stasevich. Councillor Irwin would like to speak to the motion.
Yeah, look, I think we're fortunate to have a really good chair and 2 external members. They bring great value to the Audit and Risk Committee, and certainly I think we're in a very fortunate position, and it's not huge money, so they do a great job for very little. So I'd like to thank those Audit and Risk Committee people too, so they do a great job.
Thank you. Seconder would like to respond, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly I echo those comments. It's important that we have independent oversight of our financial position and risk that we come into and face. Peter Knights has a profound level of experience and exposure to both risk and finance, as do the other 2 members, and I think they support what Council are proposing and moving forward, and certainly pull us up when we don't meet the bar. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak in regard to the motion? I'm not seeing any. Like to sum up, Councillor Irwin? Nothing? Thank you. We'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 9.4.4, the place naming of Lord Nelson Park multi-purpose sporting facility. Can I get a motion in regard to that, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that Council determines to name the newly constructed multi-purpose facility at Lord Nelson Park as Lord Nelson Park Community Sports Centre and gives public notice of its proposal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Irwin. Could I have a seconder in regard to that motion, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grady. Councillor Irwin?
Yes, Mr Mayor, look, that's a slightly amended to the Council meeting agenda. It did go out for public consultation and this was the name that came back as the most popular. We are just putting it out for public notice, so I think it encompasses everything that people wanted. There were a few that wanted a specific name. Having trouble today. But I think this covers the all-round of community sentiment. It certainly was the name that the majority of the community picked, and hopefully this one is settled. It's not set in concrete yet, but it's the one that's proposed.
Thank you very much. Could I ask the seconder if he'd like to respond, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Councillor Irwin summed up, that was the most popular out of what we have. 46 people voted on it, so it was quite a few ahead of all the rest. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Grady. Any other councillors like to speak? I'm not seeing any. I'll go back to the mover if you'd like to sum up.
I'm sure Councillor Driscoll will be very happy with this name.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Uh, 9.4.5, the adoption of the governance rules. And the purpose here is to make a decision on the amended governance rules. We have a recommendation. Could I get a motion in regard to that recommendation?
Mr Mayor, the recommendation is that Council adopts its amended governance rules.
Thank you, Councillor Haswell. Could I get a seconder in regard to that motion, please?
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Irwin. Councillor Haswell, you'd like to speak on behalf of the motion?
Yes, for sure. This is it's quite a simple one actually. Well, it's not simple in what we've all been through with COVID-19 and everything, but what it does is the amendments change the Local Government Act of 2020 concerning virtual meetings so they can take effect from effect on 2nd of September 2022, and this means that councils will be able to conduct virtual meetings in accordance with their relevant governance rules on a permanent basis.
Thank you for that. Second, I'd like to respond. Councillor Irwin.
Yes, look, as Councillor Haswell said, very minor change. I think the changes were made during COVID, and now this just puts them in a permanent position. So, and brings us into line with the 2020 Local Government Act.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors would like to speak in regard to the motion?
Mr Mayor, thank you, Mr Mayor. I will state for the record that I will do my very best to stop being in mute when I'm talking across the Zoom platform. I will do my very best, but I think this actually takes us into a new realm where we start to communicate digitally. And again, my profound apologies to all members here that I continue to miss that mute button.
Thank you, Councillor Stasevich. Any other councillors like to speak on the motion? Any summing up need to be done, Councillor Haswell?
Nothing.
Thank you. We'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much. 9.4.6, the Child Safety and Wellbeing Policy. We have a recommendation. Could I get a motion in regard to that recommendation or some other motion, please?
Mr Mayor, oops, I've lost it. I do apologise.
9.4.8.
Yeah, it's just skipped ahead now.
Yeah, of course you can. Thank you.
See, I told you I was technically challenged. That's all right. Thank you. I move that the Council notes the updated requirements and approves the revised Child Safety and Wellbeing Policy.
Thank you, Councillor Stasevich. Could I have a seconder in regard to that motion, please?
Happy to second that motion.
Thank you. Councillor Dempsey. I'll pause for a second while you get yourself tuned back in. Councillor Stasevich, you'd like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for your tolerance. The Victorian Government has announced the new child safety safe standards will commence on 1 July 2022, and this policy that we're voting on will allow us to enact those requirements of the Act within our operating environment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dempsey.
Thank you. Just following on from Councillor Stasevich, the Victorian Standards and the National Principles for Child Safe organisations has updated their policies, and we're just bringing those in line with retaining Victoria's focus on Aboriginal cultural safety and the empowering children and young people, which is something that's really important to focus on. Having a specific focus on the safety of Aboriginal children and young people is important for us moving forward and to be recognised in our community as well. So I commend this plan as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors like to speak for or against the motion? I'm not seeing any. Councillor Stasevich, would you like to sum up?
I think Councillor Dempsey did that really well, and my apologies for the technical glitch.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 10, notice of motion or rescission, and I don't believe there's any, and I'm not seeing any. Thank you. Item 11, reports from councillors or committees, and I'll quickly go around the table, and I'll start with Councillor Haswell. Thank you. Councillor Stasevich? Nothing. Councillor Dempsey? Thank you. Councillor Irwin and Councillor Grady.
Gerard, I attended a webinar on Cities for Nature. It's for greening tree coverage in gardens and in streets and all this, and it was quite interesting. I got some notes and I took some screenshots, and I'll get out to all other councillors. It's I thought it was, when I first looked at it, I thought it's another one of these wacko ones, but it wasn't. It was quite good, and I think we could probably have a look at some, as far as Sloane Street development could help down there too. Thank you.
Okay, any other councillors want to report that they may have missed as I've gone around? Thank you very much. Item number 12, any urgent business? No, I'm not seeing any, thank you. Item 13, any public question time today? No, I haven't been made aware of any, so I presume we haven't got any. Mary? Thank you. We don't have anything in closed council today, Madam Chair, Madam CEO. Okay, thank you very much everybody for attending both the meetings today. So I'll declare today's council meeting closed, and as Tony Driscoll would say, happy days. Thank you very much, and stick around for